back, everybody, or welcome to the Minecraft Short Stories Podcast. This is episode 76, and in this episode, I will be reading the fourth part of the Players Not Alone series, which is a story I wrote. And this is a very highly requested part, probably because I left you on a giant cliffhanger at the end of it. I'm sorry, but this is going to be another cliffhanger at the end of this one. This story finally has broken the streak of every single story being like 500 words longer than the last. 500 words meaning it's like 3 minutes longer. So this one is less length. I guess that's a bad thing, not a good thing, but for me reading it, it's kind of a good thing. Anyway, there will be a part 5. I'll just go ahead and confirm that. I can't leave you where I left you off during this story. Can't leave you on a cliffhanger once again. So I'm very excited to read this. And then also another thing I'm excited about, the next part to the story on the Patreon podcast, so Minecraft Short Stories Prologue podcast. And this story is coming along nicely. The story is for patrons of any tier starting at $1, and it's called The Hidden Stories. That's the series name, not the name of the story. The name of the story is The Noble Quest of Salamar, which you'll get the name if you listen to the story, I promise. But this is for patrons, and also on the Patreon podcast is a story before the story behind the stories, where I go through my reasoning, how I wrote this, the foreshadowing, some extra stuff about the story that I didn't put inside the story, some background like knowledge and lore about it. I made one for this episode, that's like prologue 15 or 16. But if you want to check any of those out, go to the links inside the description. There's the link for this podcast on YouTube if you want to watch on there for some reason. And then there's also the link to the website. Anyway, that's patreon.com/Minecraft Short Stories, all one word. But I hope you enjoy the story, and I will be shouting out all the people who got the quiz question right from the 1 million plays special, so make sure to tune in to the next episode. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the story. Before the story begins, I know all of you guys won't go back and listen to all of the 3 episodes before this episode to know what's happening. I do have a quick summarization. This is obviously not everything that happened inside this like 10,000 word story. So I highly recommend you go listen to those episodes. Just look for The Players Not Alone Part 1, 2, and 3. That's their names. Anyways, so the story begins with the player, which is, he's only referred to as the player, spawning into a new world. He spawns into the middle of a desert, and almost immediately he noticed something strange about the world, which is whenever he does something new, something novel, there is a lag spike. The CPU usage goes up. So he's in the middle of this desert with one tree, he mines down the tree, he crosses the desert, and he makes it to a forest. And this is when the story gets really weird. All of the forest suddenly erupts into flames as he's trying to make a house, and he gets one screenshot off of a mysterious figure inside the woods. Later checking, he realizes that the figure has the exact same skin as him. In the last installment of the series, the player goes down into a cave to search for resources, and there he is confronted by Ghost, and barely escapes. So, with you guys all caught up, let's get right into this story. The Players Not Alone, Part 4. I was shaken. My life in Minecraft had been an arrow's breadth away from destruction. My first suspicion was that this was some kind of cruel joke. Ghost was only sparing me to kill me or trap me at a later date. Then I actually considered it. Ghost had been intent on my demise. I had run, and then defended myself, and he ran. Was it possible that Ghost was copying me? I thought about it as I trudged up the cave I'd so nearly died in. I thought back to my first encounter with Ghost, trying to remember exactly what he did. The first time I had seen him, and it seemed so long ago, was when he was spying on me from behind a tree in the forest I entered after escaping the desert. Importantly, the forest was decimated by a huge inferno when I first saw him. The puzzle pieces clicked into place almost instantly. I had been in that forest right before it burned down. Ghost was also wearing my skin as he was in the forest. When I first saw the specter, I thought he was only wearing my skin to confuse and trick me. But what if he was just copying me? Ghost had followed me into the cave. Ghost had shot an arrow only after I had been practicing shooting arrows. Ghost also wore iron armor, which he hadn't had before I crafted my set. Ghost didn't attack until after I instigated, and he didn't run until I ran. It all makes sense now. I somehow hadn't seen it before. That Ghost was copying me and learning from what I did. Just as everything made sense, I came out of the cave into the sunlight. The understanding I had gained flitted away like a newly awakened Minecraft bat. There before me was something completely baffling to me. Spread all around the ground were blocks of dirt and logs, piled on top of each other and even constructed into freestanding walls occasionally. There was no form or function to anything, and as I walked among it, I knew it had to be ghosts doing. What it could be, or what it could mean, was completely lost to me. Just over the hill to the south of the cave's opening, I found where the blocks had come from. The ground was pocketed with holes where dirt blocks had been, and the trees were similarly missing log blocks from their trunks. Sitting in the middle of the disaster area was a crafting table. I hadn't placed it, and it was evident that Ghost did place it, and he also knew how to utilize it. Sitting right beside it was a block of oak planks, which meant this intruder could craft, mine, place, and, evident from the half-formed walls behind me, build. The image of Ghost casually mining away in a cave somewhere, collecting resources to bring back to his cozy cabin in the Minecraft forest, popped into my head. Perhaps he even has a dog too, I added in my head. This thought of a cabin in the woods reinvigorated my drive to make my own house. Now that I had more than adequate resources, there was no more putting it off. I left the strangeness of these two clearings, marking down the coordinates, and started further into the woods. I was looking for a clearing, grove, meadow, or even a mountain to set up my home base. I saw a savanna to my right and instantly went in the opposite direction. Savannas were so bare and ugly, and literally no blocks looked good in the biome. About 100 blocks later, I reached a very steep incline. With the help of my handy water bucket, the one without the axolotl in it of course, I quickly scaled it. On top of the mini mountain, complete with snow and a cliff, there is nothing but a bare oak tree and a great view. My secret to finding villages in Minecraft was to find a vantage point, such as this cliff, and then set your render distance to 32 chunks. Minecraft seemed to be made with the assumption that you would play with only a 16 render distance, so double that made the world seem a lot smaller. Sometimes you could even see as many as 6 biomes. Within these biomes, you could usually see the smoke and roof of a village. After abusing my computer with the 32 render distance, I found my plan worked perfectly. At the edge of where the fog obscured my view, I could make out a medium-sized village within an old-growth taiga, one of my favorite biomes. I faced myself in the right direction and jumped. After falling a couple of dozen blocks, I put my water bucket into my hand. Right as the ground rushed up to meet me, I clicked with my bucket and stopped my fall with the source of water. Unfortunately, this was the bucket with my axolotl, so the water and the axolotl were there to stop my fall. I scooped up my best friend, apologized, reoriented myself, and set out towards the village. Night came and went with no further sightings of Ghost. I hope he's okay, I thought. I had struck him with my iron sword, and only now did I start to think of the ramifications of that. What if he could feel pain? He, after all, wasn't just another player. He lived in my world and it alone. What if I had hurt him beyond all repair? What if he couldn't just eat food like my character and heal? Most depressing of all my thoughts, what if I had killed him? I knew I needed to find Ghost, not for my safety or curiosity, but to ensure he was okay. While thinking these heavy thoughts, I reached the taiga village. The village was waking up just as I arrived, villagers leaving their homes to do their work or to congregate at the well. The village was larger than it had appeared when I first saw it. This was due to a third of it being under a large overhang connected to the rest of the village by some very steep paths. I passed a librarian's house, a potter's house, and a few of the generic villager huts, these being the taiga version of course, until I found the well. The well was rather small, only 2 blocks wide and 2 blocks long, and it was rather pointless, the fact being that any 2x2 source of water was infinite in Minecraft, which meant the depth was arbitrary. Rather than explain to the villagers the pointlessness of their well, I introduced myself by going around and raiding their homes. I came across a lot of bread and saplings, but also an extra pair of iron leggings and some obsidian from a blacksmith's unguarded chest. With the village now bare of what I cared about, after I'd uprooted all of the farmer's crops, I backtracked from the village to a promising spot I'd seen in the woods. This spot caught my eye because it was the perfect place to set a trap. It was a relatively flat and completely treeless clearing, covered in tall grasses for unseen observation. The grass had the slightly bluer tint of the meadow biome, which helped it stand out from the rest of the dark taiga, making it easier for me and Ghost to find. My previous desire for a quaint cabin in the woods had turned into a plan for a quaint trap in the taiga. The plan was simple. It began by building and staying in a cabin for 2 Minecraft days. If Ghost continued to imitate me, he would inevitably come to my location and reenact what I had done. The 2 days I would stay would provide Ghost with enough time to find me and hopefully trigger any of the things that made Ghost copy me. I refound the meadow and began my work. I immediately came upon a problem. I was never a builder in Minecraft, more of a wanderer. Whenever I spawned in, I would go searching for materials and villages. On my journeys, I would write down the coordinates for promising spots for my base, but usually never settle till post-diamond. Even then, it was usually in the middle of a forest near a village. Never in one of the hot biomes, and usually not in the cold either. Because of my temperament, I never got much practice with building in Minecraft. My elaborate build ideas would ultimately end in frustration as I failed to implement them over and over. For this plan, to save my mental health, I went with the classic and time-honored technique of building a cube on the ground, building a wall around the perimeter of the cube, and then laying a roof on top of it. This style is called remaking a villager's house. The building was accented by pillars of unstripped taiga logs in the corners, and it had cobblestone floors. After placing the last block, I took a step back and admired my work. "This is probably the best thing I've ever done," I said, congratulating myself. I set my bed down on the left side of the cabin, and my crafting table on the right. Next to my crafting table, I set the smoker and blast furnace. I fed the furnaces, then fed my stomach with the last of my chicken. With health and hunger rehabilitated, I set off to poach some more prime poultry. After continuing my crime streak of chicken murdering, I went underground. This time, I wasn't looking for iron, or even diamonds, but redstone. However, I wouldn't pass up a diamond if I found it. I needed the redstone for the most important part of my plan, the trap. I wasn't very talented at redstone. By talented, I mean knows how to use it at all, but I could make a few things. At the entrance to the cave, I set a blank sign, just testing to see if Ghost would mess with anything. I also set out a cake I had made. I took a slice out of it to see if it would do the same, and a campfire. I put out the campfire with a shovel to see if Ghost would relight it. I hypothesized that Ghost would mess with what I had directly interacted with, the cake and the fire, but leave the sign alone. As I crafted these items, I could see my CPU usage momentarily going up on the F3 screen, and lag occurring from that. I took a screenshot of my makeshift lab before going underground. The cave system under my cabin was very hard to get through. It was spaghetti cave after spaghetti cave. Monsters hid in the dark recesses of these narrow caves, surprising me by attacking from behind when I thought I had already lit up that part of the cave. After battling my way through hundreds of blocks of caves, I eventually reached around Y level 20 and could begin filling my inventory with redstone. With my diamond pickaxe tearing through the glowing ore almost instantly, and it being in abundance, my inventory was soon filled to the brim. I didn't need close to this amount, but I got kind of carried away. By backtracking the way I had come, I managed to reach the surface without having further durability taken from my armor. Upon reaching the surface, there's nothing to report about with the lab, and I didn't need the screenshot to tell me that. If Ghost had already found me, I would have been grossly unprepared. I left the items as they were and stowed my unneeded items in a chest I had hidden under the bottom log of a tree. Back at the cabin, I laid my first trap. The first trap was simple but devious. On the block before the door on the inside of the cabin, I placed a piston right below it. I then used a redstone torch, redstone dust, and extenders to carry the signal dozens of blocks away from the cabin. The entire wire was underground. This lever, when pulled, would push an iron block in front of the cabin door, making it impossible to escape without mining. The lever to activate it was situated inside a special outpost I designed for when Ghost found my clearing. It was just a tiny dirt room, terraformed to look like the surrounding landscape, with a door into it located on a side not visible from the cabin. With this mechanism turning out surprisingly well, I moved on to the next. After all, a single iron block wouldn't deter anyone for long. After looking at my paper that outlined the plan I had made, though it hardly seemed relevant now, I was reminded of the danger of death. With this in mind, I designed the next trap. My next upgrade ended up just being an emulation of the first. What I did was extend the trap in front of the door to the outside walls of the house. Since I didn't have enough iron, I used cobbled deep slate to try and make it take as long as possible to mine. I simply set up a chain of pistons all around the outside walls, that would push the cobbled deep slate up by 1 block when activated by a lever. This would shortly deter ghosts if you tried to mine out the cabin through the walls. In that amount of time, the next stage of my plan would begin. I wired the redstone and placed the lever beside the other. I labeled them with some hanging signs. Just as I clicked out the first sign, reading 1, door trap, the game did something horrifying. Minecraft crashed. A bolt of fear ran through me. This is bad, I thought. Minecraft momentarily put up its saving screen, then completely quit, along with my hopes. I have a very bad feeling about this. I reopened the Minecraft launcher and pressed play. It loaded in normally, as did the world, and I had a sense of dread as I watched the cube fill in on the loading screen, it strengthening as the cube grew. If Ghost was standing before me, I wouldn't be surprised, though I would be grateful to know he was okay. The world loaded, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. Of course, that was the same situation when I first joined this cursed world. Looking to my left, the sign was still where I left it, with no creepy messages like run or turn around added to it. I took a few tentative steps out the door, expecting to see the cabin on fire, but it was fine. I ran over to my lab and inspected every object. My inspection was instantly stopped when I noticed what had been changed. On the previously blank sign, there was text. I don't believe this, I groaned aloud. Somehow still managing to walk forward through my fear, I read what the sign said. It read XYCGH3TO. Looking around, I was alone. No sign of Ghost, and no explanation to what his first sign of communication could mean. End of part 4. Thank you guys so much for listening to this story, and thanks again for everyone who participated inside the poll. There's still time to participate. I have not told you what the answer A, B, C, or D is yet, so go participate before the episode. If you do it inside the comments on Spotify or the comments on Apple Podcasts, you may get a shout out. I won't guarantee a shout out just because there's so many of you guys, so if I miss you, one of you, or if there's just too many, I'm sorry I got left out. So, make sure to check out all the links in the description. Make sure to check out the Patreon for the bi-monthly update on the podcast. And make sure to look out for the next episode. I'll see you guys inside the next episode.